Hi, it's Susan from Worldpeacefull, and I'm going to do a meditation today. But before I start with that, Happy New Year. May 2019 be an amazing year of self-discovery, of awareness, of finding out who you really are and living to your highest expression. Before I go into the meditation, though, I thought I might just recount a few things that have come into my experience over the last few days. I went and met with some people for dinner and was dressed up. So dressed to the nines, as they say, which is something I don't often do these days. Anyway, now when I see homeless people, I don't see them the same way everybody else does. They're my people. I know it. It's amazing the shift in my consciousness since I became homeless a year and a half ago. Now, I'm still the same person I was my entire life. And in fact, it reminds me of my mother saying to me years ago when I was living in England with my husband. I encouraged my mother to come to England. She inherited money from my grandmother, and it was the first time she'd ever left Australia. So she agreed. I was very happy. She came out to England, and she had plenty of money to splash around, and she was given the best treatment. And she said, it's very interesting. People were treating me so well because I had money. And she said, I'm still the same person. And that's what we do. We quickly assess a person's socioeconomic status. We quickly assess what they're wearing, what they're doing, standing, sitting is really all we ever do, lie, stand and sit, in truth. People quickly evaluate what's in their interest, what's not. And particularly nowadays, our culture's changing. You know, when I was young, people were quite friendly to everybody, and there was no fear like we're seeing today being generated through so much violence on television, so much negative press, which in truth has been a feature over many years, but it's intensified, I've noticed. But nonetheless, you know, I've come from a space of just accepting people as they are. What I observe is people are not accepting people as they are. There's real strict criteria around who's my people, who's not. And I guess that brings me back to they're my people, the homeless. But in a way, I really like that. And I say that with great integrity, you know, because I recognise the experience between us. And that's actually what it is that makes us identify with any group, is the experience we've shared. And then we misunderstand it, and we only stay with what's familiar. The challenge, of course, always is to step out of one's comfort zone if you want to grow. You're never going to grow if you just keep watching people or plugging in the iPhones. You're never going to grow. You're just going to check out of life and stay in a comfort zone because you don't want to experience anxiety. I understand that. However, going back to the homeless guy that was sitting on the street, I knelt down and I said to him, how are you? And he was sort of like, yeah, he didn't look too good. I could see in his eyes. His eyes were a bit red, and he probably tired, but it looked emotional, like he suffered, you know. So I quickly said to him, I've been homeless for a year and a half. And I said, I've had no income for a year. I said, I understand. And he got a shock. I actually saw him get a shock because of the way I looked. He thought I was wealthy and, you know, because I got beautiful clothes on, makeup, like now. People go, how can you be homeless? You're supposed to be dishevelled. You're supposed to be smelly. And, of course, those on the street are, because they don't have access to showers and they actually don't have a house. They sleep on the street. It's like, this is what happens. It doesn't mean they are a this or a that because of a circumstance. That's literally brought them to their knees. So we talked, he and I said to him, well, we both, I stated to him, the truth of the matter is people don't care. And people might hear this and say, oh, yes, we do. On the whole, no. I have to say no, people don't care. People won't get involved. They're too scared. And I understand. I'm one of the people walking past, and I've always felt uncomfortable, to be honest, when I was working and earning lots of money. But people don't care. And I just sort of said to him, not to make him feel worse, but to say they don't care, they don't get it, they've not lived it, they don't understand it, and you have to do it yourself. You're going to have to find a way out of this. And what I said to him was, what is it that you want? What is it that you want for 2019? And you know what his first response was? I want my family to come back together. And then he told me it was his mother and 2 sisters. See, family breakup. This is a bit of a clue for those of you who don't know why people are on the street. That's one aspect. And I said, can you organise for them to come together? And he sort of shook his head to acknowledge that. He was thinking about it. And then I said, what else do you want? What do you really want? He says, I want to get off the street. I said, that's really good. I could have said, go to these agencies, go to that agency, but I've been to those agencies. He would be aware of some of the charities. But I don't know, I wasn't really keen to send him off to more disempowerment. And that's not to say the charities aren't doing good work. I'm sure they are. I just didn't resonate myself. I don't want to be dependent. There are, of course, others who prefer dependency, but I don't. I will never be dependent. I'll eat grass. It's just me. Anyway, so I held his hand because I feel for him. I also hugged him. And I said, talk to people. Just talk to people. I said, put it to them this way. Tell them you're homeless and you want to get off the street. Have they got any advice? I said, just ask anyone. I said, you could even put it on your sign. I'm homeless. I want to get off the street. Can you help me? Or can you advise me? I prefer to use the words advice just so that they don't feel it's all about money, because that's what everyone... It's funny, isn't it? We don't want to give $1. Oh, they'll spend it on drugs. That was actually a complaint he had. He said, everyone thinks you're on drugs. He said, I'm not on drugs. He said, they're stereotyping us. And I said, I know they are. I said, I've already been judged, and I was judged looking like anyone else, but I was judged by people in high positions who I tried to talk to actually empower. I wanted empowerment was what I was asking for, but they weren't interested. And I have found that interesting, and I'm actually going to share another story with you about disempowerment. One of my friends was going away, and she asked me to cover her on one of her jobs. She was a temp, and it was just a secretarial role. I'd been through university, I'd done lots of stuff, but I needed a bit of money and I was heading up north. Anyway, I was working for forensic accountants, which I find a funny term. Bit of market wafering there. Forensic accountant. What do they dig up the books? Cook them, then dig them up. I don't know. It's kind of funny because forensics is often seen as, dealing with bodies, but I guess when you lose all your money, that's probably what you feel. You want to jump out a window. That's not what they did. They did some work from memory with the law courts, actually, because I read some of the information on family law and the breaking up of the family and the children, the pressure on the children. I read some of the cases. And I thought of how our families are breaking up. This connects back to that homeless man, by the way. The fact that males and females are not able to work together, and this inequality that's constantly pervading, certainly the lot for women, that's definite. That's not an imagined division. It's real. And it's obvious. I would never have been a typist had I had a chance not to be. Because I was female, people just designate you, oh, you're a this, you're a that, and you get encouraged down these pretty aimless pathways which have no career path whatsoever. That's what happened to me. And of course, you're not valued. You don't think, people don't convey to you that you've got worth and, that you can be anything. I was never told that. If anything, I was told the opposite. I was told I'd never amount to anything. I was told that by a boss because I made mistakes when I was typing. And what else? I'm just trying to think what else she said. Oh, I made a mistake, I remember, on a job. It was to do with a telex machine. No, it wasn't my fault. I just didn't know the telex. They didn't train me properly. And I left a telex on all night, and that was going to England. So it was costing them a lot of money. So the point there being is you don't get a lot of positive reinforcement, to become something better than your stature. So when people talk about status, I don't resonate with that because I can see it's been programmed in. It's untrue. We're all equal in actual fact. So going back to the forensic accountant, now it was really funny. If you had no work, they didn't mind you playing games. Now, I had just come back from my world trip and I'd been writing my book, which I know quite a few of you who are watching my videos now have been looking at. And I have a fair idea who you are as well. So this is a loving, warm message to you as well. When I was there, I asked, did I ask? No, I didn't ask. I just got out my USB and started editing my book. Now, he was getting tense about that. And he came out and he said, can you not do your own work? So in other words, I could do games but not do my own work. And I sat and reflected on that. I thought, isn't that interesting? He doesn't want to pay me for anything that benefits me. Now, I could sit and do an aimless, boring game, and that's fine. He's okay with that because I'm not getting a benefit out of it. Now, this was an insight into disempowerment that day. Now, then we get exploitation that came next. He knew I had a university degree, and he said, are you a good writer? I said, yeah, I do a lot of blogs. So then he decided to tap into my ability to write. He didn't want to upscale my pay, of course. So I was to write blogs so that they look good and they can then optimize hits to their website because that's why they do blogs. It's part of optimization. And I just did it because I didn't want to type. And, I'm a creative thinker, so I liked writing. So I went with it. But I note the imbalance of power. I note the gender aspect. I've been around. I worked in 400 companies. I've seen it all. Women are always the ones supporting the men. And didn't they do that in the home? And that's how primitive we are as a species. But let's hope, even through the Me Too, which some people have taken exception to, those who believe women, that this idea of equal opportunity is somehow offensive, or as a woman evolves, there's a great evil associated with that. This is a religious sort of imposition on females that they should just serve. We're not actually here to serve. The nurturing aspect of woman is actually genetically programmed in because we give birth to children. Now, even those of us who haven't had kids like myself, I have very, very strong nurturing instinct. I have looked after children and I've watched them, and it's instinctive. The men tend not to. They don't have the same awareness because they've not been the primary carer for the most part. And we're talking over hundreds of years because that genetics gets passed on. We're not just a discrete unit that's born when we're born. We're actually the result of genetics that's come down. There's also a spiritual dimension to who we are, which I've talked about in other videos in respect of, past lives. And, I had a discussion with this couple that I met, these new people, and I brought up reincarnation, and you could see the guy didn't buy it. even though I quoted a story to him that was actually true. And it was an American woman who had remembered a life in Ireland. And this is actually I'll put it in the Australian vernacular, a fair income story. And she was drawing pictures of Ireland. She had pictures of churches she was drawing as a child. She knew names. She kept remembering a village. And then when she got married, she still was focused on this place in Ireland. And I think her husband said to her, look, just go and explore this. So she and her son went. Now, this story is really amazing because there's real proof and evidence in this story, and there'll be plenty of them out there if people investigate. But what happened was she found the town that she remembered. She remembered it as a very young child, so it's not like she'd been educated or seen something that made her think of this town. She hadn't. She just had memories. She found the town. She recognised the church. She saw it. Apparently, she walked through the town, recognised some buildings. She found the house where she lived, and it had actually crumbled, and there was a lot of grass. It was actually, like the remnants of that house, if you like, the rubble. And she was able to point out to, I think a journalist was with her because they filmed it, where the house was, because I saw the footage myself. And now this is the really interesting part, which most people go, oh, that can't be true. How can that be true? She found her children. Now, apparently she died at childbirth I think it was the 5th child. I could be wrong, but that's what I remember. When she was dying, she swore she would come back for them. Can you imagine that sort of love? She came back for them. And she was this young American woman. But the amazing part was when she arranged to meet them, I don't know if she would have said, I'm your mother, but she might have said, I know something about your mother. She might have said that. That would be the way to get them to go. So they came. Somehow I get the feeling there was 5 of them, so maybe it was 6, the one on the 6th birth that she died with. Because I think 4 of them recognised her. Her eyes had not changed, even though she was a young woman. She was like, I think 30, 40, something around there. One of them could not accept it at all. Couldn't go there. It was too much of a leap. And I could understand that. I mean, that would do your head in. It would throw upside down everything you think is normal. You're seeing this person, they're young, they're clearly not these men and women were in their 80s. They would be going, that's not possible. Now, it's good to sort of look into that idea of what's possible, what's not, based on what we believe is true and real, because we're in a certain reality. Now, when something like this occurs in someone's life, your whole reality is challenged. Everything you thought was solid and real actually throws up a completely different paradigm. It's a paradigm shift. So one of the children couldn't deal with it. I totally get that. The others recognised her eyes. Not only her eyes, she went for a walk with one of them. They walked down to the water. She took him on a boat ride when she was alive. She then conveyed to him their conversation on the boat. He was a little boy at the time, word for word. She did it with all of them. She told them all their memories of her being their mother. I want to cry when I think of this, I do. Can you imagine how those children felt? The disbelief that this person's their mother, but the evidence of what she knew, no one knew. Only they knew. It's not like it was documented. She wasn't a psychic. So that was proof. And the joy that would have come from that, So anyway, I told a bit of this story to this couple, but I could see the guy, he wasn't buying it. And it's closed-mindedness, I've always been very open-minded myself. And if I hear something that I think sounds a bit out there, I actually suspend my thought. I don't sit there and go, oh, that's not true. I don't debunk people because what do I know? See, this humility. I don't know. I could be wrong. And that's how the mind opens. When I was teaching peace, that's what I used to teach children. The smartest thing you can ever say is, I don't know. I could be wrong. When we think we're right, we become blinded by that righteousness. That's where that comes from, you see. So anyway, harking back to that homeless man, he actually stood up. He wasn't sitting on the street when we were talking. He actually stood up and we looked eye to eye, equal. And I just held his hand and I said, "What's your name?" And he told me, and I said, "I'm Susan. Nice to meet you." And he said, "Oh, my first girlfriend was Susan." And I said, "Well, take me as an omen. Take me as an omen. Good things are coming for you, okay? You've just got to," I said, "if you've got a tent, that's off the street." I said, "I've got a tent. If I can't find a place to stay, I've got a tent. I'm never homeless." So essentially what I was really teaching really was when you believe you're not homeless, the universe does shift. We are the creators of our reality, definitely. And I know this having had a life full of experience. Positive thinking people typically, these are the management, positive thinkers, will say, positive think, and it'll happen. So this is not a far stretch for most people. But he has to imagine himself out of that situation of on the street in order to get off it and then see a success in that, and then you move into successive situations to build success. Not this idea of, oh, look at the failure, look at this person on the street, they're a failure, what a loser. This is the unconscious narratives that keep people on the street. And when I was in the city yesterday, there was a lot. And I was just going, this is outrageous. People just go about their business as if it's fine. In India, I remember seeing a lot of people on the street. Had quite a few beggars approach me as well. And just the strange dichotomy of walking into a restaurant and getting all the food and it's air-conned. And you go out in the street, it's really hot, dirty. People are sitting there in rags. I'll always remember a situation. It was in India, and where was I? I was in, let me think. I think I was at a university, so it was Gujarat. This is Gandhi's. It was a university that actually had a picture of Gandhi above the podium because I gave a talk there. And I went out to a restaurant with one of the teachers and actually drank the water. Big mistake. I'm going to tell you a quick story about that in a minute because it's quite interesting what happened. So anyway, I was standing with this person. We were waiting for a motorbike. They were trying to get me to the train on time because it was gridlock traffic. There's no way I could get a car. So they organised a motorbike for me to come get me with my huge bag with all my clown gear in it. But meanwhile, I saw this young girl with a baby on her hip. She would have been about 7, I reckon. And she came up begging for money. And I chose not to give her any. I actually had no income at that time too. I only had money up that was savings. And of course the thought goes through your mind, I'm going to need that for the whole trip and I can't give to everyone because there's such a huge need here. If I was to simply give to everyone, I'd end up with nothing. And I had a world ticket at the time and I needed to buy food and things. That was a decision I had to make. But I'm really glad that situation happened because I never forgot her. Because what happened was when she went away, I looked at her and I looked at her mother and I know there was some judgment within me about the mother. It's like, how can you do that with your child? And I think the memory for me is to remember my judgment of that. And maybe when I look at others who are judging people on the street, they are me. So I can accept that. That's me making peace with those who judge those on the street. That's how you do it. So I'm very grateful for those people in India teaching me about my own judgment. I was well fed and well looked after. This woman was trying to eke out a living. I doubt she would have had a man. You know, Mother Teresa was looking after a lot of abandoned women. I've been to one of her charities as well in near Chennai. And her work was really spiritual. It was to get them to forgive the people that chucked them out. Domestic violence, all sorts of stuff happens. Middle East, you know, women get beaten. You know, there's still this chattel idea. That's why this whole idea of inequality is, you know, really outrageous, that we're still living in a world that sees women as just childbearers and, you know, somehow inferior. This inferiority-superiority divide. We're seeing it now with the rise of fascism too. That's happening here in Australia. It's been in the news, possibly organised, I would say, to put it into the collective memory. But that idea of fascism is a form of total control. We see in certain organisations leaderships that are reflecting this attitude of entitlement. And I might just say, on the other hand, often the unemployed are seen as entitled when they're living on the merest of incomes because they're getting it for nothing, they think. The fact that it's about basics, it's not about working, this complete intense focus on you must all work, you must pay your way, that's your value. And I just want to come to value. We don't value those who don't work or those homeless because they haven't paid their way. They have failed in the collective unconscious. That's actually not true. I'm an economist. We have market conditions that shift. We have entrants from developing countries coming online, competing for markets, who can do it with much cheaper labour. We see sort of saturation of markets because markets go through, you know, early adopters up to optimisation and go into decline. We see, I'm just sort of in my mind just doing a bit of a bell curve. The optimisation is when a particular product might reach its optimum in respect of the maximum price it's going to make because people have bought it, market saturates, people look for other things, other entrants bring in other things that may well compete with it, differentiate from it, etc., etc. So market conditions are always changing. Technology definitely brought a huge change. It was supposed to bring on the leisure society. I wrote a paper about that at university. It certainly didn't. It ended up facilitating harder work and taking work home. So the hours of work increased through the onset of technology, but it was sold as going to be a labour-saving device. And of course, there were labour-saving devices in respect of, you know, vacuums and, you know, food processors, microwaves, which are radiation, interestingly enough. Don't think that's healthy. You might have sensor lights, all sorts of things that have saved you time. Washing machines, if we look at within the lifetime of grandparents here in this country, they were having Coolgardie safes, which uses kind of like a matting to cool the food. It's not refrigerated, not electricity. I know I was chatting with a woman who had no electricity when she was young. She washed by hand. She said it was extremely hard life. You know, they had to eke out a living. Very tough. No, hardly any employment at that time. That's within the lifetime of a person alive today who would be in her 80s. I have to check with my mother whether she would have witnessed that. There was also horse and cart here in Melbourne, believe it or not. And that's all within a generation, a couple of generations. So things have changed. The technology, whilst it may have improved to some degree the quality of life, we've moved around through cars, trains, planes. You know, our travel times have decreased. But the life is sped up, and that's the cost. The opportunity cost is no time for self, no time for reflection, which is why I'm doing these videos, is because I can and I have the time to reflect. And I know there will be interests that don't want people reflecting and thinking about things or speaking their truth or reclaiming their democracy. You're in a democracy as far as I'm concerned, so you can think what you like until it shifts. And I know it's working on shifting. I know it is. But Gandhi comes to my mind, and you might want to contemplate this. Empires always fall. He says, think of it, always. They always fall because they become blinded by their power. They seek to control it all. This has happened in history. This is nothing new. We have a collective memory of this. We saw it in Nazi Germany. This totalitarian state of mind that came out of, in the case of Germany, scarcity because of the impoverishment after the First World War. Germans had to pay reparations, collapsed the economy. So Adolf Hitler, of course, rose because he was able to hand out bread to the people. He looked like he was caring about them, and that's what they do. They make out they care, and they don't at all. And he was very fervent, and he had backers. A Hitler-like character cannot rise unless there's a resonance. The only reason that situation unfolded was because people supported it. They saw him as strong. We think that's strength. It's not. It's dominance. Dominance and strength are two different things. I'll give you an example of strength. Living in poverty, staying optimistic, having no partner, the way I've lived is strength. I can do it. Not having people reinforcing and telling you you're great and, the next goal and buying the house and all the rest of it. True strength is enduring hardships in life. And there's plenty of people in our society that are very strong. I know a lot of women are. I've met some of the most, I would call them giants. No one knows about them, but they're giants in respect of strength. Gone through so much pain, heartache, and they are just endlessly giving. I've never seen anything like it. That's power. But for those who live in a different mindset, they see power over as power. And I get that. Everybody nods and they admire you, get paid well, a lot of reinforcement because it's all about economic growth, right? That's the mantra. But what if I was to say to you, the real purpose of our life is about happiness? And if you can be happy with nothing, that's great. And when I say nothing, I don't mean a forced nothing where people own nothing, because there's a possible control paradigm sitting over the top of that. I'm talking about selflessness. I'm talking about not needing a lot of things to live a life where you just simply appreciate what you have. You feel it in a sense of peace, that all is as it should be. You need nothing more. This is called trust. Some call it faith. I'm going a bit more silent because I'm actually feeling for life at the moment, the life that we all are. You as well as me. You are me. It's only our beliefs that divide us. You're a this, I'm a that. None of it's true. I'm not a this and you're not a that. You're my brother and my father, my sister, my mother. As they say, that might sound corny, but I like it. It means you're family, and you are. You may not like your wayward sister, but I am what I am. You are what you are. And I would want peace for you. I would want happiness for you, abundance. I would want you to have everything that you want. That's called love. That's what love does. It's not the enemy. Love is for you, not against you. But love will also speak up. And that is the highest love in actual fact. Some may not see it that way, but that's the way it is, if that's the intention you're coming from. So with that, I'm going to do a bit of a meditation, because I did feel that this morning. Yes, my videos are long. It's because I allow myself to express until I'm ready to stop. I'm not caring about doing 5-minute videos so everybody watches it. I'm not doing this for popularity. I do this out of love, that's it, and I don't care where it goes. So breathing in. Breathing out discord. Breathing in love. Breathing out truth. Breathing in acceptance of what is. I want you to close your eyes with me. This is for you. This is not about me. Just be still. You'll notice how hard it is to close your eyes and not think. It's virtually not possible. But each thought is energy. That's why what you think about, you bring about. There are no idle thoughts. What do they say about fear? Fear is false evidence appearing real. Just know that you're loved. Truly. No matter what you choose. That's what unconditional love is about, you see. It's not even I have to love you, I love you anyway. And you will say, you don't know me. When I say I love you, I'm saying I accept you. What is love? Love's unity, that's all. Love is the ocean, you're the droplet. That's really how it's envisaged, and that's how it is. You're just having an experience in this lifetime doing what you're doing. And it's not unacceptable. It's an experience. And from that, you learn something. I can't know what's best for you. I can't know ever what's best for you. You can't know what's best for me. You can only come out of what you perceive is true. All life is perception. There is no absolute truth here. So we're always wrong. I like that. We all think we're right, don't we? Done the analysis. Me too. I've written lots of reports. I'm sure I'm right. I've cracked it. But if I was to go deeper, well, and if I was to resist and say this shouldn't be happening, well, it just did. That's life. What did you learn from it? It is supposed to be a bit of a humorous ride. We are supposed to be having fun on this ride, but that's serious. I've seen some photos, I was looking at some photos on the internet. Very poker face, very serious. Did laugh. Because they don't know the humour, you see. They've gone through their lives rational. See, rationalists. Hardline. Do as you're told. Don't rebel. Dissenter. No, they're not rebelling and they're not dissenting. They just disagree with you. But we love to put labels on people. The enemy, or enemies there that disagree with me. They're not agreeing. See, totalitarianism wants everybody to agree, or at least pretend to. Deep down, they don't, and that's the thing, because they think it's nice and secure when everybody's on the same page. But if you all don't agree, but you feel forced to agree, you're not on the same page. It's just a matter of time before the scenario shifts, because human beings will create another way. That's why it can never work. It's not even a question of, of really debunking the plan. It's just saying it can't work. It's the nature of human beings. They're just not going to do it. No matter how one seeks to change the receiver, there's a whole cosmology around us. And there is this power of love. And it's a real power. You just have to look at someone who saves their child. Now, this is where soldiers often can promote war. They don't do it through, I just mowed down a whole family, aren't I a hero? They don't do that. They say he saved that life. He stood by his mates. They went through trauma together and they bonded. That is where the love is in war. Facing the fear as well, overcoming it. But there's a lot of guilt. The PTSD is all about that. I'm just going to go into the PTSD for a sec. PTSD. They're shocked. Going against their nature. That's what it is. PTSD. I'm just going to bring it into the workplace because I want to contrast it. Bullying. Feeling vulnerable. When we use the words vulnerable, not just me but many others, people often think there's a weakness in that vulnerability. It's actually not. What vulnerability is a recognition of our feeling state. It actually comes from ancient origins, in actual fact, where a threat may have come and we felt defenseless. The whole war thing has come out of the defenselessness that we feel. I just want to sit with this for a bit. Felt our life under threat. The PTSD, even the psychological injury, I'm actually moving across two areas. Both are to do with abuse, shock, vulnerability, all these things. They become psychological injuries, you see. Powerlessness, couldn't do anything to save that person's life. Hopelessness. The powerlessness is what creates war. So it makes sense if we didn't want to go to war and people weren't profiting from it. The ideal scenario would be empowerment. But unfortunately, because we've got an industrial military complex, and I say again with love to those who are probably watching this, I understand that you have an industry and people have jobs, making lots of money out of it. And you have to have a pretty detached sense when you're looking at those who suffer from it. You have to have a strong story to justify why it's important. I just want to sit with that for a minute as well. There's the excitement of the electronics, there's the excitement of the inventions, the excitement of speed, tanks, technology, cyber surveillance, control, power, feeling of power. That's what it is. That's what it all is. Everybody's seeking power. Everyone's powerless. Some will do it through this industry, others will do it through pharmaceuticals, they might do it through policing, might do it through government. IT, that's a big one now, where they're seeking power. Why are we seeking power, kiddies? We all do it. So it's not holier than thou. We've all done it. Why do we seek power? Because we've disconnected from who we are. We don't know that we are the power we seek. We're already there. I talk a lot about love in my work because I see that as the real power. I don't just see it, I feel it. It's a really wonderful thing to love people. Some might go, oh, that's really, look at that. I get real. I don't love them. I've had that said to me, I don't care. And that's fine too. You are what you are. You live out what you live out. I'm just offering here another perspective for those who see their worldview as the only worldview. And anyone that differs from it has to be unplugged or in some way undermined or poo-hooed or argued against because we take up competitive, argumentative stances and we want to win. That's another big one, particularly men. The women aren't as competitive as the men. I know that from experience, having been a woman. Most women will collaborate together. If anything, women like to give to each other. But it's the men that want to compete because they're trying to prove their manhood. They want to win. They like the feeling of being better than. It's ego-driven, actually. So the ego is a large part of all of this. And it's pretty much reflective of our state of consciousness. It's where we're at. And I don't say that, again, from a superior position of, I know better. I don't. I'm only reporting what I'm understanding. And there's moments when I'm acting out of a lower consciousness too. You know, I get caught up in arguments. My mother's one of my greatest teachers. She reminds me, which is good. She grounds me in a lot of ways, you know. But what I share is what I truly know from my heart, you know. And ultimately, you know, I feel a lot of peace in a sense and a lot of allowance for everybody, really. I don't have really strong judgments around people anymore. I don't like to see people being hurt, obviously, which is why the war thing's coming up, because I've looked at Syria and Afghanistan and Iraq and the Balkans. And really, you know, the media doesn't report the real carnage on the ground. And those who are causing it don't want that reported because it doesn't look good. But the fact of the matter is it's happening, and these are civilians. And regardless of perceptions of us and them, they are your mother, your brother, your sister, your father, your grandparent. How would you feel if you saw your own family in that situation? You would want to save them. You'd be outraged that people are hurting your family. So put yourself in the shoes of the other. You know, until we can move away from this attitude of the evil other, and that's been used to create that formulation of a group against something. Eckhart Tolle talks a lot about the war against. He talks about drugs and, you know, the war against terrorism. He says they're all doomed to fail because the thing you fight against, you create. And I would say literally, if you want that to stop in all seriousness, you have to stop. Anyone that threatens anyone is causing terror. I personally don't care what nationality they are. Anyone, I can see domestic violence in this as well. And both ways. I see women also causing psychological harm when they're abusing their husbands. So, you know, I'm not hard and fast on either side in actual fact. I just see, is this serving us? Is this not serving us? If it's not serving us, we are at choice as to whether we change or not. We can stay unconsciously in the stories we tell ourselves to justify violence. Or We can take a deep breath, and this is where real strength comes in. This is where the real courage is. We look ourselves in the mirror, and I want you to do that. If you're in that category, go to the mirror. Really go to it and look into your own eyes. Are you at peace with what you have done? Do you feel it was for the betterment of others? What was your intention when you did it? Now, this is not to say you should go away and feel guilty. You shouldn't. Guilt is just another negative energy that we don't really need in this world. I don't want you to carry the guilt. You simply make a pledge within your own self. This is a pledge of allegiance. This is the real pledge of allegiance. Make the pledge, I won't do it again. I'm going to change because I care about my world. I care about people. I care about who I am. I have self-respect. And I know that it can be scary when you make changes because it's like there's risk involved. You might lose your job. You might lose friends. You might be exposed. Someone might actually learn of what you really think. That's because you too have been subjected to oppression. Everyone has. It's not just the down and out. They've also oppressed. I've seen it. So, like, there's really no them and us. It's like we're all really the same thing. We're just coming out of different life experiences. We all have guilt, done things we regret. The forgiveness has to come in. That's what Mother Teresa was about. Forgive them. Forgive yourself. You came out of what you came out of at that time, believing what you believed. And within that, believe it or not, there's an innocence. That's what I see. That's why I don't hate anyone, because I can see they thought that. They're at that point. They're coming out of the consciousness that they understand. If I dare to say you should all think like me, then I'm being arrogant. Of course you shouldn't think like me. You should think like you. That's recognition of diversity. It's not a human rights thing, because there's a great fear around human rights at the moment. I notice they're trying to dismantle it, and democracy. And what I'm saying to this is you've got to go deeper. You've got to find the space to do what I've been showing you. Go still. Spend time with yourself. It's your life. Your decisions have implications, and you will experience, and I know some people won't believe this, but when you pass over, you do get to see it all. You will be shown. It's the way it is. Because we're not the top pin here. We're just living out a life experience. But when you pass over, which I'm sure George Bush Sr. is finding out about now, he would have been shown everything that he did in his life from all directions. And he's been a busy boy, hasn't he? But I send love to him and his family too. They are me. I am you. This is how it is. There's aspects of ourselves in everybody. There's no them and us. Everybody's just creating it out of what they understand. And once you really seriously get this is peace on earth. It's not some, ethereal experience. You just relax. You go, oh, okay, right. So when I force that person, they're going to come back at me. I'm actually creating what I don't want. Oh, okay. What I think about, I bring about. If you want abundance, you can create it. But you don't have to do it at the expense of other people. It doesn't have to be 2/3 of the world's population in poverty. If we've got a population problem, well, let's work out how to solve it together. We don't just, work along lines that serve only ourselves. What you do to another comes back because we're one. You actually can't separate. You might think you're separate, but you're not. We're all together in this. And that's what I'm here to share with you. We're one. So I will leave that with you with lots of love and lots of peace. And may 2019 be a year of great illumination for you. And that may your deepest dreams come true, whatever they are. Okay? I'll talk to you later. Bye.